Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Welcome to the fire hall, and we're going to be talking about the Chain Lake Dam upgrade project. The objective of this afternoon is to provide you with some information, give you some update as to where we're at with things, and ultimately to provide you with some time to ask the questions that are important to you. That being said, I'm going to mention right up front that please hold your questions till the end, and we'll have that opportunity to answer them. And you will be hopefully using the microphone in the middle of the room there to ask those questions. So please think about those questions and then hit that microphone to ask them later on. Anyways, my name is Myron Semigan. I'm with the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen. I'm joined this afternoon with colleagues from the RDOS and from Ecora who will introduce themselves. A couple of things, housekeeping before we get started. Washrooms are always important. Back down the steps towards the other hall and then to the left. The fire exits, take a look. There's one in the corner on the north east corner, I believe. We're in the room here. Take a look, make sure you're familiar with that. Muster point will obviously be outside towards the road. I hope I'm hitting that properly. I did not actually talk to the fire chief about that. And this session is being recorded for a couple of purposes. One is so that we can actually transcribe some of that information to make sure that we can give you answers to things that were asked during this meeting. But we'll also be posting the presentation that you're going to be seeing today as well on our Regional Connections website. So please continue to go to that site to get the most up-to-date information. With that, I'll hand the microphone over to the regional director, or pardon me, the regional district's CAO, Jim Zaffino.
Thank you, Myron. So as Myron stated, my name is Jim Zaffino. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the regional district. I was the finance guy, so the finance people weren't able to come, so I'm here to supplement them. I have some information here. There was some concerns out there about parcel tax versus assessment. So I want to talk about that later. But what's more important, you're here to hear what's said about the project. And after that, as Myron said, if you have any questions, if I can answer them, I will. And with that, I will pass that on to Alan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alan Fillion. I lead up our Infrastructure and Development Services Department at the RDOS. Just want to reiterate a big thank you to all of you for joining us on Friday afternoon of a long weekend. We kind of plan to have a little bit of rain, get that out of the way. So once we're done here, the sun will come back out, hopefully, and you guys can enjoy your long weekend. As Myron mentioned, we have a presentation for you that will hopefully provide some useful information, and then, of course, answer your questions as best we can and follow up with any further questions if we aren't able to answer them. So hopefully our time together is meaningful and very educational. And with that, I will pass it over to Trevor to start us off.
Hello, my name is Trevor Nickdeem. I'm a junior dam safety engineer with Ecora, based out of Kelowna, British Columbia. I was invited here to just give a little bit more of a technical background on the project and where we stand from an engineering consulting standpoint. I have met a couple of you guys, having been to site a few times. So it's good to see the turnout, and I'm glad we're able to get more people involved this time. With that, I think more or less we can get into it. My portion of the presentation is more or less going to cover the why and how we got to this point in the project. And if anyone has any technical questions, as Myron said, please save to the end. And at any point, if I'm unable to answer any sort of questions, I will take that back with me, and then I'll be able to provide them with Myron. So any RDOS press release will include the answers to those questions. Just a little bit about Ecora. We are a multidisciplinary consulting service. We specialize in geotechnical, hydrotechnical, civil and structural engineering services. We're based out of Kelowna, British Columbia, but we also have offices in Penticton and the Lower Mainland. Myself, I've got about 2 years experience in the dam safety, and I've been on the Chain Lake project since about March 2024. Cameron, who's one of our senior hydrotechnical engineers based out of Vancouver. He is the hydrotechnical engineer of record for this project. He's got about 30 years of experience. And as I mentioned earlier, the presentation will basically cover the why, how, and what of the Chain Lake Dam upgrades project. So to go back to 2022, the province effectively ordered, following one of their dam safety officers coming out to site, a third-party engineering consulting firm to perform a dam safety inspection of Chain Lake. At the time, we had come out and had determined that there were several components at the dam that had exceeded their design lifespans, as well as were showing significant signs of deterioration. Out of this DSI, we made various recommendations, which was to monitor the dam for any performance decreases, as well as to address several deficiencies, which included a lack of spillway capacity and concrete deterioration. Specifically, the low-level outlet, which is the structure that kind of runs through the middle of the embankment, had also exceeded its design life. This is just based off of record drawings we were provided from the time of construction of Chain Lake Dam. Following the dam safety inspection, ECORA was retained to determine the feasibility of decommissioning the dam. Just to remind everyone, when this project first started, it was to decommission the dam. However, through various amounts of environmental and hydrotechnical analysis, we determined that decommissioning the dam to the natural channel grade would permanently lower the lake by approximately 1.45 meters. This would drastically affect any sort of lakeshore infrastructure, as well as impact a significant amount of environmental habitat. We did also show that the decommissioning of the dam would help the downstream areas in at least 1 in 200-year storm events and greater. But we did find that because of the hydraulic constraint a decommissioning would cause, the lake itself would be more at risk to flooding in the decommissioning. Because of all of these options, we had discussions with the RDOS, and it was determined at that time that it would be best to proceed with upgrading the dam to the most up-to-date codes and standards of the BC Dam Safety Regulations. A number of options were analyzed. I'm not going to go into each one, but it was basically just different types of spillway designs and dam elevation ranges. Eventually, we decided to go with a specific option that would result in the least amount of spillway geometry increases, while also maximizing the flow during any sort of flood. And then at this point, we went into the detailed design phase of the project in conjunction with the RDOS. Basically, the most significant issue that needed to be addressed was the dam was not able to pass the 1 in 1,000-year flood. This is basically for a significant consequence classification, which is how much downstream infrastructure is impacted in a hypothetical dam breach. Found that Chain Lake Dam would be a significant dam consequence classification, which is the second lowest out of 5 rankings within the province. This was mainly due to environmental concerns because there are a number of red or blue listed species within the area that the environmental and the province had identified. And other issues were that were no sort of debris prevention or retention systems upstream of the dam. However, we were able to, with discussions with the dam safety officer, eliminate the need for a log boom. The main argument for this was it would have to be placed significantly upstream in the lake, and the concern with that was that it would hinder any sort of recreational activities on the lake, as we would have this large log boom stretch across the entire width of the lake, and we understand that residents might use the lake for various activities like boating. The SRW was staked out in 2024, and following the staking out was handed over to the RDOS's legal team. One note, because I know this is a question that's come up previously, at the moment it's assumed during the permitting that all vegetation within the RSRW will be impacted during construction. That is always going to be assumed in construction as a worst case scenario. If the contractor and the environmental team can come to an agreement or during construction areas can be protected, they will be. But from a construction standpoint, we always assume that vegetation within the SRW will be impacted during construction. The main components of the construction project will include rebuilding or decommissioning and then rebuilding the spillway. The current spillway design is an Ogie overflow spillway with an upstream and downstream channel that are armored with riprap. Due to the hydraulic requirements of the spillway, the inlet channel will have to be slightly lowered and slightly widened. Those were shown in the design drawings from the very beginning. As I had mentioned, it will be armored with riprap to prevent long-term erosion. And as well, the upstream and downstream faces of the dams have to be armored with riprap. This is because wind wave action was a concern on the upstream face of the dam, and on the downstream face of the dam, due to the hydraulic gradient of the creek, we have concerns about backwatering. So this would prevent any sort of erosion along the toe of the dam and undermine the structure. It was identified that multiple components of the low-level outlet, despite exceeding its life expectancy, were in fairly good condition. So to try to keep the costs as low as possible during construction, a number of components will be retained and reused to prevent the entire structure from having to be rebuilt. This is just a current issued for construction drawing. These were one of multiple sheets submitted to the RDOS to show, as well as to the bidding contractors to provide cost estimates. As I had mentioned, to keep costs as low as possible, we're going to try to reuse a number of low-level outlet systems like the gate mechanism, concrete pedestal, the intake structure. The low point along the right abutment there, what we were asked to do recently was to reissue a drawing which basically more clearly defined the elevation that this abutment will be infilled with. It is currently being proposed to be infilled with 25mm crushed gravel, however, would be topped with any sort of topsoil along with the riprap on that abutment. From Ecora's standpoint, the windmill is not within our scope of work. I know that's a question that's also come up quite frequently, and that is something that will be discussed between the RDOS contract and residents at a different time. And then we had also proposed that the multiple access routes be used. This was discussed during the contract meeting. We had walked up to what I'll call the higher eastern access road as well as the lower western access road. After discussing with contractors, it was determined it would be substantially cheaper to use the lower western access road due to the heavy machinery and having to come down the slope. There were significant concerns about the stability of that road. So that from a contractor point of view, that's what they're proposing. As of now, the construction is tentatively scheduled for August 2026. It is estimated to be approximately 8 weeks. This is based off of the contractor bidding methodology. One item that was noted during the contractor meeting was during extreme fire behavior, a number of activities have to be halted before 1 p.m. due to the risk of sparks. This includes such placing riprap within the spillway. So during construction, fire danger will be monitored, and any activities considered high fire danger has to be stopped before 1 p.m. During the construction, the Shinish Creek diversion will have to be closed. This will just allow for the temporary lowering of Chain Lake Dam. The lake does have to be lowered to the base of the dam to allow for the excavation of the low-level outlet. And during the post-construction, there will be a number of environmental monitorings for 1 to 3 years. This is basically to satisfy the provincial environmental permitting aspect. So to cover basically the technical details, that's the extent of my presentation. To cover more of the RDOS aspects, I'll hand it off to Alan. So thank you very much, and I'll gladly take any questions after.
So as Trevor mentioned, that covers really the technical part of it. And then now we're going to talk about the dollars associated with the project, kind of the next steps as far as moving the project forward design-wise and getting it ready for construction next year. I'll talk a little bit about the actual voting process and then finish off with, again, the next steps from here. So the $1 million question, we had a construction cost estimate from earlier this year in April. That's $1.75 million. We have Growing Communities Fund, the old gas tax fund, of just under $500,000. And then we did receive another grant through the IAF of about $550,000. So we've suggested at the bottom there estimated funds to be borrowed of about $750K. Recognizing that we've rounded that number up in case any of you are adding them up. They don't add up exactly. With the point, I guess, being that the 1.75 million number isn't a hard number at this point. So we felt rounding up to 750 is a bit on the conservative side, builds a bit of contingency in for us. So what that translates to as far as estimated annual costs. So total borrowed amount, again, estimated at 750,000 over a 30-year debt payment schedule. That's just under 52,000. And so a per property cost of $830 per year. And then an estimated annual operating cost of somewhere in the range of 14 to 24,000. Again, that's an estimate at this point that will require further dialogue with the community and will depend to some degree on how active the community is still in helping maintain and so on and so forth. So that, again, that's an estimate. So what that ultimately translates to is annual operating cost of 240 to 380. So a total cost per property in the range of 1070 to 1220. And again, that's based on 30-year borrowing. 4.95% interest rate is the current interest rate, but of course it'll depend on whatever that interest rate is ultimately at the time when the loan is taken out, should we get to that stage. So next steps for us at this point is to revise the engineering drawings to reflect the removal of the spillway bridge. This is really in an attempt to try to bring costs down and try to minimize the impact on the residents as much as possible. We will then have to resubmit the engineering drawings to the province for their approval ultimately. We have to complete an archaeological impact assessment. I think we're close to being ready to do that. We're just waiting on the final permit to come back from the province. So hopefully that can happen soon. And we need to finalize the statutory right-of-way agreements with the property owners that are impacted. And then ultimately potentially retendering the project early in 2026. Once this is complete, the bylaw and petition process can then proceed. So the petition process, the borrowing bylaw will have to be amended for the updated construction costs once we know that. The RDOS board approves the amendment and bylaw brought to third reading, and then the petitions can be mailed out to the residents. We anticipate late winter or early spring 2026, and copies of the bylaw would be included with that. So a bit about the process further. The signing the petition constitutes approval by the property owners to adopt the bylaw. So signing the petition means you're in favor of the project proceeding. When there are multiple owners on title, it needs to be a majority of the owners must sign the petition. So if there's two owners on title, both have to sign. 3 or more, obviously it has to be a majority. If the property is owned by a corporation, the petition must be signed by the corporation's authorized signatories. How many petitions are needed? So return petitions from at least 50% of the properties and at least 50% of the net taxable value of land and improvements. If we receive petitions in excess of that, the borrowing bylaw can then move forward at that time. So summarize again, next steps. If we have a successful petition process, then next summer lake level would be lowered in late July, early August in anticipation of construction. Construction would start in August. And just so everybody understands, we have a limited fish window where this work can actually be undertaken. So hence the construction in August. We don't have the ability to do this type of work in the spring or the summer. It has to be in this fish window, and hence the startup in August. So, and with that, then the expected construction completion is fall 2026. So that's kind of our quick overview of the whole process, appreciating that we went a bit fast, but we think it's really important to hear from you guys and be able to hear your questions and answer your questions. So we do have information on here about contacts for any questions. Of course, we're going to do our best to answer any today. Any that we can't, we'll take away. We post them on our Regional Connections website. That way everybody's getting the same information. It's the cleanest way to do that. And I see that Jim wants to add something before we start opening the floor for questions.
Thank you. So just a couple things. That 750,000 that Alan was talking about, that's a worst case scenario. So when you go to vote for a yes or no for the borrowing and the project, we cannot borrow any more than 750,000. So the project is limited to that amount. Also, I don't know all of you here, but I did get some phone calls regarding concern about parcel tax versus assessment. And one of the things, so I want to be proactive and talk about that. 99.999% of all the taxes that I've done like this is parcel tax. And why? That's because you don't want to have a tax for something like this that's based on assessment, because assessments are volatile and they're based on the market. And your taxes would be increased or decreased depending on the market for that value. Also, you may not have property that is directly on the shore of the lake. However, the property, you more than likely own the property because of the lake. So that's another reason. Also, the interest benefits that are overlooked are, for instance, the lake is there to stop the flood. You have access to the water. There's enhancement community value. So the property that you have may not be at the lake, but there is a value based on the lake. So we just want to let everybody know about that and can answer questions later. Alan, I'll leave it back to you.
Thank you. So with that, we are going to open it up for any questions. Again, if you could please make your way to the mic to answer to ask any questions. That way everybody can hear them. And also we're recording, so that will help with the recording of the function. So who wants to go first?
Okay, when we're talking about the funding of it, one of the questions was whether we can pay off, instead of a parcel tax appearing on our tax bill every year, can we pay that out?
Yes.
Lump sum.
Yes, and that means that you're not paying the interest.
And that's exactly it. So that if we've got people that are doing those lump sums, it should decrease the amount that you're paying on that.
And that's one of the benefits of having the parcel tax,
Okay.
where you wouldn't be able to do it on assessment.
The next thing is about fish. So you guys are going to be doing this in August, September next year. How is the fisheries department? I don't know if there is a Department of Fisheries anymore with the BC government, but what's going to be dealt with as far as the fish goes? Because it's going to result in a fish kill, because how long is it going to take that lake to get back up to the level where it is today? What's going to happen to the fish?
So there is still a Department of Fisheries and we're actively engaged with them. What this involves is significant permitting, and there's still a permit yet to be achieved. We're still waiting on one more permit. But basically, this is why there's a substantial amount of vegetation inventory going, because they don't care about just the fish, they care about also the vegetation. So a fairly comprehensive plan was put together with using the SRW, and assuming all vegetation within the SRW is removed. We had to submit information like diameter of trees that are to be removed, the diameter of trees to be replanted, the areas that we are proposing replanting to take place. Any sort of proposed replanting isn't set in stone. That's just to satisfy the DFO that there is available area within a certain kilometer distance of Chain Lake. In terms of fish kill, that is something that the DFO is still currently looking at. From a historical dam project, typically if the reservoir can't be lowered to a certain, coffer dams will be installed. That tends to be a more favorable but more expensive item from the DFO point of view. But our environmental team has submitted a significant amount of information to the DFO to satisfy their concerns, because they have the same concerns with you when it comes to the fish. And one of the pushbacks was, while they believe that due to the depth of the lake, they don't anticipate a fish kill, they wanted a little bit more time to review internally. So from Ecora's point of view with the environmental team, they have all the information we've given them, and they're still currently reviewing that last aspect. The last correspondence I had with the DFO was back in June, which was that they are about halfway through their assessments. And at that point, they hadn't raised any concerns, and they still had about half to go.
So that's a lot of stuff in there. So basically, if there is a fish kill, who will it automatically be? Will they put new fish in? What's going to happen? Or is that something we're going to have to deal with after the fact, saying that there was this fish kill and we need to get someone to put in stock into the lake?
Likely, and this is why we typically with these EFO permits, one of the key points is there has to be an agreement for environmental monitoring, whether that be 1, 2, 3 years. That's on a project by project basis.
Okay.
And that's where we have our environmentals come out and sort of do fish inventory. And then that information is passed to the DFO, and then the DFO basically determines the next steps when it comes to that. So the DFO with these type of dam projects is rather engaged. Both pre, during, and post-construction. There's also a world where the DFO asks to have an environmental person on site every day during construction. We're still waiting for that information. But ultimately, that's primarily with the DFO to determine. We just have to give them the raw numbers that we were able to determine through open source data, as well as a number of field visits in the few years up to this point.
Okay. And then I have so many questions, but I'm just going to do one more so somebody else can ask stuff. Let's say we're using the figure of $1.75 million. Now you're saying it has to be reassessed to take out the spillway bridge. I've been led to believe that you also mentioned, you guys talked about the second road, like, you know, trucks coming in one way and going out another way, and that was going to increase the cost. And so that's being taken out. So when you're looking at the 1.75 million, and you're saying you're going to look at it again for taking out the spillway, are there other factors also being taken into account? Because I was led to believe that, as I said, that second road's no longer going to be an option. And also the riprap. We've had quite a problem with the amount of riprap that's being installed and how it's going up the side of the Dwayne and Jackie's cabin and whether that can be decreased. So just wondering if that's taken into account.
So I'm not familiar with the second road, so I might ask Myron if he can comment on that. I'm relatively new to the project. But I could say we're gonna review the project with the lens of any opportunity to save money. We will look at that. So the bridge is the first obvious one. The riprap, my understanding is that there was mention of a local supplier, so we provided that
Yep.
information to the contractors, but ultimately it's their determination whether they can use that or not. The riprap requirement, that is a requirement that maybe Trevor can.
Basically, the concern with the riprap is the area is prone to flooding, regardless of the dam or not. So from a provincial standpoint, the BC Dam Safety Program, for them, it's about protecting the dam structure and maintaining any sort of catastrophic breach for the downstream area. So ultimately, we've had number of discussions. When determining riprap size, we always go as small as feasibly possible. We don't want to be overestimating riprap size and suggesting these large rocks when realistically much smaller rocks. This is something that's been discussed and had multiple hydrotechnical engineers provide input on this. And from ECORA's and the province's standpoint, the size and the scope of the riprap is effectively what they are comfortable with signing off on and approving, provincial and consulting point of view. That's something that's been discussed both all iterations of the drawings, and we're doing our best to try to keep that as small and as least of an impact as possible. But from the province's standpoint, we're kind of backed into a corner when it comes to protecting the dam from any sort of erosion during higher flows.
So are you building this to a 1 in 200 year flood or a 1 in 1,000 year flood?
So I know that's another question that's come up that I've been forwarded, is that in the CDA guidelines, significant consequence classifications, the guidelines suggest any sort of return period between the 1 in 100 and 1 in 1,000 year. Typically, or at least more recently, specifically with the 2016 Oliver Dam failure, the province has been taking a more conservative approach. So when they provide 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000, the province isn't going to accept a design less than that. Ultimately, that's not what the code says, but they are guidelines. I shouldn't say code, they are CDA guidelines. So it's not necessarily in law, but that is what the Dam Safety Office is comfortable with signing off for this dam. Ultimately, a 1 in 1,000 is substantially lower than what a lot of dams in this region are currently designed for. This is due to the fact that the biggest concern with a hypothetical breach is the environmental impact. There's not a whole lot of infrastructure downstream of Chain Lake Dam. But if we started to get into the high or very high or extreme, then you're talking about 1 in 2,000, 1 in 10,000 perceivable maximum flood and 1 in 1 million year floods. So we've done our best to justify maintaining Chain Lake as significant, and the province is effectively most comfortable with going as low as 1 in 1,000 year, but we're not going to be able to get any sort of approval for anything less than that.
Okay, I will let somebody else ask a question.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob McMurtry, and we live at 3,500 Prince Island Road. We also have a vacant lot, 3496. And when we bought all that property in the mid-80s, we were informed by our real estate person at that time that the reason that the dam, the weir was put in was to supply constant water flow for all the people downstream that had crown land from top of that mountain to the top of that mountain for their cattle and well-being. So my question to you people is, are they getting dinged as we are here for this upgrade? Because they've definitely benefited from it more than we have.
The people that are currently part of the service area, I forget the name, Shinnish Creek service area, are the same group of people that are impacted by this project, which does not include the people downstream. It's the properties in the immediately vicinity of the lake.
Those people, ever since 1839, have benefited tremendously from the water flow for their cattle and their well-being downstairs. So there's something wrong with that. Sorry. That's the way I feel. And that's why it's there. Back in 1839.
Excuse me, the two farms that are included in this street.
That's okay.
So, okay, so I'm hearing that the two farms you're talking about are included in the service area. There's 62 properties that are being taxed. And it's essentially, it's goes back to the original bylaw. So we're saying, okay, the original bylaw won't apply if you vote yes for this. So what I'm hearing, thank you for letting us know.
Draw water all the way down the river. Right into town.
Uh,
they draw water.
If there's any questions, please up here because no one else will be.
Fact, they draw water all the way down. I know people that draw water all the way down.
And that's exactly my point, sir. Everybody since 1839 that has been living on the creek all the way to town, to when it hits the other rivers, have benefited for this, from this weir. So I object very strongly that they aren't assessed a certain amount, as we don't have a choice apparently.
Well, you do have a choice in that. That's why there's a vote on this.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
I'm Tony Speckin, 3568 Princess Summerlin Road. I forget your name. You mentioned something about the petition process was based on land value?
No.
Was there not? What was there? And maybe I read it wrong or heard it wrong.
What was said is that 50% of the land value has to be a yes and 50% of the property owners.
50% of the land value. So why is land value being brought into it?
That's a process that the provincial government is requiring. That's how something like this gets adopted. So
But then if we're going on land value on one item, what are we going land value on instead of a parcel?
couple of advantages on having the parcel, like first of all, that lady that's talked about paying up in front. If it's taxed on assessment, you cannot pay it up front. A parcel tax is essentially stating that there is a benefit regardless of where you are. As far as the province goes, this is something that they required and that's something we can't change. So as far as the dam's concerned, what we are saying is that regardless of if you're got property frontage or not, you bought the property because of the lake. And then there's also an enhanced value for in other areas that the lake provides to you.
And also the people that are all the way down bought their properties because they have water access as well. And they benefit from it as well. So limited at 62 properties is completely unfair. It should be everybody all the way down the line, all who benefit. I mean, from something I heard that the campground is not responsible for paying. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
So how can the campground, which is one of the biggest waterfronts on this lake, are not responsible? Is there not something that the campground cannot impose additional fees to the people that are camping there to help offset the cost? Like, I don't understand. It seems like things are really not fair the way this is all being designed.
Yeah, we did pose the question to the province with regards to the campground, and they came back with the answer of that they were not going to support that.
Well, I mean, isn't that just the same? If I turned around and said, I'm not going to support it and I'm not going to pay it, and that's a financial hardship for me, is that not the same? I own the property like the government owns the campground. It's something to think about.
I have one for two comments if I can. On that, the province is kicking in $500,000 up here. So in some respects, the province is providing some support to us. Additionally, there's the discussion around should it be all the way to Princeton, all the way downstream. I think we can pretty much assume that we would go through the plebiscite with a no vote. We're not, the people downstream are not as invested in the lake in multiple ways as the 62 parcels around the lake are. I would fear if we expanded it all the way down there that we would lose on that plebiscite and we would have a drank lake.
Yeah, could we talk about the, a no vote? We've been told that if we vote no, it's an automatic decommissioning of the dam, which we would pay for as well. So how could that be a benefit to us to decommission it?
Just from a provincial regulation standpoint, this is based off the Water Sustainability Act. So I'm strictly speaking from what the dam safety officer point of view is they're concerned about general public safety. So the dam safety office looks at it that these issues either have to be remediated or that they're going to order a decommissioning. This is something that has happened in a number of areas around the province. There are case studies out there that I would strongly suggest at least looking at to see how that was handled. But that's something that the province, based on the Water Sustainability Act, does have the power to do, and they have done it before. So that's something that both the regional and the head of dam safety have at least provided me with that information on.
Okay, that's fair enough, but the way it was presented to us, it'll be part of the parcel tax for us to pay this 300,000 to decommission the dam. So that has nothing to do with the province saying, you know, it's, how could that be put into a partition tax?
That is to the best of our knowledge, that's the way it would be, is that the decommissioning costs would be forwarded to the property owners.
But as,
So let me add to that. With regional districts, we are nothing more than a department of the province. We have certain restrictions that we have to follow and processes. And in this case here, for regional districts, right now we have 165 services. Each service is independent and self-sustaining. So we are not allowed to take any costs that are in a service establishment bylaw, and this is what you are, a service established bylaw, and charge it to somewhere else, to the general taxpayer or any other area. We have to charge it to where the expense is incurred. And that's a provincial guideline, not something that the board of directors has decided to do.
okay, so back to the decommissioning. That's the only option if we vote no? That's it?
Yeah, again, to Trevor's comments, that's the likely course of action that the province would direct if we can't upgrade the dam
Right.
with the safety lens.
Okay, and another question I had too. We've been told there's literally hundreds of other lakes with a dam in the same situation as us. And we couldn't get any names of those lakes, but can you give us a name of a lake similar?
Looking,
Where
so are you
where the
specifically-
62, where property owners are paying for this public project?
Personally speaking, the two that come to mind is the city of Greenwood is working on decommissioning Lind Creek Dam. And I am speaking from projects that Ecor is currently involved with. I don't have information on other engineering firms like Tetra Tech or Stantec, any dams they're working on. And two decommissionings currently ongoing is with the town of Ladysmith on Vancouver Island, Mackey Road Dam and Colonia Drive Dam. Both of those, I know there are public news articles about because they're actively being decommissioned right now during this fish window. But in terms of dam decommissionings, those are the two that I personally know. I would suggest the BC Dam Safety Office online sometimes has case studies.
I'm more interested in the ones that the local residents are paying for.
The ones that I've personally been involved in have been from a municipal standpoint.
Okay.
So I'm not familiar with the tax breakdowns on any of those projects. So off the top of my head, I personally don't know any dam decommissionings. In terms of dam projects, we working with a couple golf courses like Kitley Creek Dam. They have to undergo a similar point of view where they're actually trying to sell the land before to avoid any sort of paying. So that's private. There was a article recently in Castnet about a dam project up by Williams Lake, a number of dam upgrade projects with First Nations landowners. This includes Beecher and Tuesday First Nations, Hutzel First Nations by Williams Lake has Rose Lake Dam currently undergoing construction. So these are just the projects that I'm aware of right now.
Okay. Well, as another option for this, I noticed we got the newsletter where this other bylaw was passed for the $10 million office buildings for the RDOS. And that made a difference of $6.16 per 500,000 of taxable property. Now, if you applied that to this project, even if it costs $1 million, it'll make a difference of 61 cents, which would be a lot easier to handle.
Don't quite understand the question. We couldn't take any of that money and move it over to a specific project, if that's what you're asking.
That wasn't the point.
So right now, as far as the building that you're talking about, the regional district staff is in 3 different buildings, IT and finance in one, the general staff in another, and emergency operations center, which is where the protective services department is, where they go out and we go out and support the fire departments to put out fires. They're in a leased building, and that leased building is sold. We don't have a leased building. Between the two leased buildings, the taxpayer is paying $120,000, which when we move into a new building, that's gone. So what you just quoted is a worst case scenario, and the staff right now that is in the main building is pretty, I'll just use the word squashed. We're very tight together, and there is no more room for growth.
Okay.
So in any area where you don't have room for growth, you don't have people, if we have job openings, people are going to look at where they're going to work. And half of the staff have no windows, and we're not looking at having windows, but some of the staff are working in little cubby holes. So we need that office, and we did do a vote on that, and it was alternate approval process that it passed, and the board was told about all the same things I just told you about.
Yeah, but I'm not suggesting moving the money, just apply that formula to this project. Include the whole of the RDOS, and everybody pays 61 cents.
So service establishment bylaw, as I stated earlier, has to stay in the service that is the money expensed. So the way that you just stated, if we establish it to everybody, City of Penticton would pay 42% of your cost, automatic. We wouldn't have a choice. But we don't have the ability to take the cost that's here and say the whole area pays for it. Because, okay, in Princeton, well, why would they want to pay for you? What benefit do they get? City of Penticton, they won't vote yes. First of all, between Penticton and Summerland, they have enough weighted votes to say no. Then the project won't pass. But I wouldn't even, as a CAO and the ex-CFO, I would not take it to the board to even make that recommendation, because legally we couldn't do it.
Just one quick question. Has there been a change to the Privacy Act?
The freedom of information?
Yeah, in the last 2 months.
In the last 2 months, not that I realize, no, not that I know.
See, a lot of us homeowners didn't know anything about this project going on. It's been going on for years. We were never informed about it. I asked the question, Privacy Act, we couldn't tell you, but all of a sudden now we got a notice for this meeting. All our names are on it, so the Privacy Act either changed or we've been BS before about not knowing, because we have no knowledge of these goings on.
Well, as far as I know, this has been going on for a while. Myron, do you have the background?
Yeah, and we didn't know anything about it. We've been on the property for over 40 years.
So from what I hear, the project's been going on for 6 years. I don't know exactly. I haven't been with the regional district 6 years.
I don't care if it's 6 years or 60 days. Nobody told us about it.
So do you know?
The one way that we're trying to make sure that people are getting consistent information is to put it on our regional connections website. That's number one.
Okay?
Second, because we're actually hearing things that some folks are not getting access to that for whatever reason, they may not have a computer or such. The choice was made to ensure that everyone got a mail out this time around so that they had information to attend this type of meeting.
Yeah, I asked about that mail out and said the Privacy Act wouldn't allow it. So now the Privacy Act allows it.
So Privacy Act doesn't affect mailouts. Since I became CAO,
Okay, so I've been,
hold on. You said, has there been a change in the Privacy Act in 2 months? When I took over and the board allowed me to be the CAO, I changed a lot of different things. One of them is mailouts. The Privacy Act allows us to do mailouts. It's not a problem. In the mailouts, it does not have all of your names on it. It has your name on it with your address and you see it, but you don't see what everybody else got. The one reason I wanted mailouts is so that individuals like you will know exactly what is going on at any given time that affects your taxes. So did something happen in the last few months? Yes. I changed the policy, the operational policy, and there's going to be a lot more meetings. The previous administration, you wouldn't have seen this. You wouldn't have seen this meeting. To me, transparency is important. And yes, you may not have known, but I don't know how many of you would have known that this is going on. I'm seeing a lot of heads here saying, yes, they knew that this is going on. I've had complaints in that people are telling me, oh, I didn't know this, something like this is going on. And they're putting it on us. They don't have a TV. They don't have a newspaper. They don't have internet. Well, there's something out there that we have that allows you to get a message on your phone if you don't have any of those. And something like that would come out. And as long as you sign up for that, you would know. So I don't know why you don't know, but I'm
not the only one. There was a whole raft of us never heard anything about.
Well, I don't know why you don't know, but there are individuals in here that do know. So
the ones that know are fine. The ones that don't know, it doesn't matter.
well, you're here and you got a specific mail out.
Yeah, finally.
Well, I'm seeing a success here. I've had meetings
But
where,
we're already deep into the project when we find out.
well, we're not deep into the project.
Well, what are you talking about?
We're talking about a vote for next year. We're not, so you do have time. If there's any issues, you can ask questions. We're here for that reason.
It's not time for a laugh, but maybe a little humor wouldn't hurt. It's really interesting how government works and we, the taxpayers, understand everything which goes on. Now, if we go through with the project, we, the property owners, taxpayers, property owners, we're going to pay for it. That's fair. I think it's fair. But at the same time, if we decommission, we're going to pay also. Isn't that fair? The government wins both ways. If we put it in and agree for it, we pay for it. If we say no, decommission, we still pay for it. Yeah, that's right. We don't get any rebates for property loss. Anyhow, that's not what I came up for originally. But it still comes back to the fact that we're all property owners that have an invested interest in this. And since we are all taxpayers invested in this project, for transparent finances, I ask a question. How many property owners are on a finance committee now for oversight? If none, why not? And when? Since we've got 62 properties invested in this, I think it's a common sense thing that we should have representation with you people in finance at the table. So back to the question. When do we have somebody if we don't? And why don't we have one now?
If we do have oversight for every single one of our projects, we have 199 projects in the regional district. We wouldn't get anything done. We are audited once a year by law, and you have a CPA in here too that can verify that what I'm saying. Independent audit to make sure we've done everything correct. As far as the operations, so this is called an operational side. I report directly to 20 directors who get that financial statement, the audited financial statement, see how we're doing overall. If there's an issue, it's because we're over budget. Your neighbors just up the road here, West Kelowna, you've probably been hearing a lot about their issues, how they spent $150,000 to figure out why they've been over budget. When you're consistently over budget, that's a problem. And you should have a problem with us if we're over budget. So we come to you and say, we want $750,000. We're not going to come back to you and say, whoops, we want another 50. So the board trusts me on the operational side. I trust the staff. And if we start doing oversight that where individuals don't have the ability and the background knowledge of an engineer, we're hooped. So are we going to have oversight? No. We do have oversight by the independent auditor. And they don't audit every single project, but if it's one of them that's over budget, it starts with me. I find out what happened. And you will know immediately if there's a problem.
So is the answer then that from this group, there will not be an individual sitting with you in the finances, seeing how it's progressing, will not have a representative from the group?
That's correct. We could answer questions because you'll have vested interest, but you're not going to be part of the actual project. With 199 projects, can you imagine the additional work? We're already understaffed, and I have to support and trust my staff, and so do you. You have to trust what we do. We are a staff of 117 individual staff members, dedicated members, and we have, like I stated, 165 services that we manage.
Thank you. Then the last thing I'll talk about is from the dam, it goes downstream through the farmers' fields. And below the dam, there's quite a little environment there, which includes fish, all kinds of critters, insects, birds. And it's a very vital environment for those critters. If you riprap that, which, correct me if I'm wrong, there's going to be a lot of riprap there, that's going to destroy or reduce significantly the environment for what would be natural living critters.
So when we submitted the SRW, that gets included in the DFO application. We have our environmental team came out and did an inventory of the species, both vegetation as well as your animals and aqua life. And ultimately, we submit that inventory to the province. What that did is, as you had mentioned, and I'd mentioned previously, a number of blue and red listed species, which is basically the BC province's way of determining an endangerment level, were identified in this area. So they came out, reviewed the construction drawings, and ultimately they felt comfortable with the replanting plan and the construction drawings that this would, while it will temporarily negatively impact the local habitat, they basically said from a vegetation standpoint and a downstream standpoint, they weren't concerned. Effectively, the only ongoing environmental permitting with the province at the moment is with the fish in the reservoir. But trust me when I say, like, our environmental team, we put in a lot of permits Ultimately, that's the call of the province, and the province has said that we're okay. We don't intend to armor the entire downstream area to the road. We intend to only armor the downstream area to the toe of the dam. So there's still going to be a substantial amount of area between the toe of the dam and that downstream access road with the culverts. And while that might be impacted during construction, that entire area is not going to be riprapped.
But a good part of it will be.
It's from the crest of the dam to the toe of the dam. So I don't have the exact dimensions off the top.
There's
of
no
my head.
riprap beyond that downstream?
So the spillway channel is
Yeah.
riprapped, which runs along the left abutment there, or the eastern
Okay.
side. And then the upstream face of the dam is to be armored with riprap. But the actual Hayes Creek channel is not going to be riprapped beyond the toe of the dam.
Okay.
What's the toe of the dam? Define it.
So actually, I'm going to just go back to a drawing here.
Give it to us in feet from the crest of the dam. Is this 100 feet?
No. This would be,
Point it out.
so when I'm referring to, I assume the downstream area, we're referring to like the outlet channel here, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so this in here is not going to be riprap. In terms of the dam crest or the dam itself, we're talking, again, this is strictly an approximation.
Get to what's not going to be riprap. Is that not riprap? Well, no, there, but the channel. It's fully
The spillway channel is to be riprapped because that's, again, the provincial regulation. But in terms of the wetland area within here, there's no intention to access that beyond having to just replace this outlet system here. But long-term, the province wouldn't let us riprap this. We don't
Yeah.
need to riprap that area. We basically kept it to the extent that we could. We tried to riprap this even less and got pushback from the province saying they wouldn't approve that. So ultimately, the extents you see here is the bare minimum that we were told we would get approval for.
My last thought is I hear you referring to the province.
Yeah.
So I would like to know, since it seems like you don't have answers for certain things, or you're not allowed to, who do we contact in the province to get some answers that you are unable to give us? And then my last thought is, I feel sorry for the two properties at the dam, and I've seen the drawings of the riprap, and what you're doing to the beach is terrible. My heart goes on to them. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no worries. So it's called the BC Dam Safety Program. I don't have like a phone number off the top of my head, but their contact information's on there because I'm always in contact with them. But I would suggest just looking up, it's called the BC Dam Safety Program, and they have contact information there. They are basically, they're forced to follow the Water Sustainability Act. And we basically, as consultants, just get hired saying, this is a problem, and then we work with the province and the client, and we basically have to come to some sort of solution that fits all the needs. And this is a rather difficult project. I think everyone can realize that. We're dealing with constraints from multiple fronts. But ultimately, when the province says you're not going to get approval for this, we're trying to get a design that gets approved that gives you the option to vote. Because ultimately, if we come up with a solution that doesn't work, then the province is going to come back. No opinion matters. They're going to say decommission it. So we at the very least want to give you some sort of option that's not just decommissioning it, because it's easy enough we could sit here and be like, nope, you guys need to decommission it, whatever. So we're trying to at least find some sort of solution that the province is happy with, or the BC Dam Safety Program, that you guys at least have an option in. Beyond that, the personal opinions of the BC Dam Safety Program, you're going to have to submit your questions to them. They can provide information, but it's like you mentioned with the government, it's the provincial government basically holding us and preventing us from really expanding what we can do. Because if we submit something that they don't support, then they're going to just turn to us, say rejected. And then we're at basically decommissioning it or not.
So I have a question on the finance side. You mentioned a 4.95% interest rate. It got me thinking that about 12 years ago, I was involved in a totally unrelated project. It was in the city of Maple Ridge, where the only similarity was that there was basically some shared infrastructure and the cost was borne by residents. It was a substantial cost in the millions of dollars. And in that case, the city because they understood the residents were paying, were able to secure 0% interest over 25 years. That thing, why is something like that not potentially available? Do you as the district not have access to things like that?
Well, the reason I'm smiling is that I tried to get a 0% increase, 0% interest-free loan. And you may hear about the background for Sage Mesa, where we're looking at borrowing 33 million, which is huge. And it was a provincial oversight that caused that. I was outright no. It was, they are not wanting to give any interest-free loan because they don't want to lose the interest. I also asked for PST exemption. That is, they didn't say no on that, but they said, you need to talk to the finance department. So if I get it for PST exemption for something that is critical and affects not just you, but the other projects that we have materially, I would hope they'd say yes. So that's something that I've got to tell you, I surprised the heck out of them when I asked for that, because no one's ever asked for that before. And I'm here to try to help as much as I can, but unless the province says yes, there's going to be a Sage Mesa meeting like this on the 10th. And if you're interested, it's online. You're going to see a PowerPoint presentation that says, asked for interest-free loan, denied, asked for PST, considered. And there's a few other things that I asked for. Whatever I asked for one project, I'm asking for all. And probably the reason they say no is because of that, because they know I'm going to set a precedent, but I'm trying, I am trying.
One clarification, one question. So if we make the dam, do the dam project, you get water downstream. If you decommission it, it doesn't change the amount of water that goes downstream. Is that a correct statement?
I don't have the exact numbers, but basically when you decommission a dam, the point the province wants is what's called the environmental flows. That is something that's determined during a decommissioning study. And what this basically says is historically, what is the natural discharge of the flow? And that has to be maintained following a decommissioning.
So that's kind of my point, whether the downstream folks, there's no reason for them to vote yes. They're always going to get the flow, whether it's from 18 something or today. So there's no incentive for them to vote yes. I'm making your point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just say yes.
Yes. But again, it's based purely on the environmental flow. So they would ultimately have to get flows no matter what, because what is considered the natural stream is based on environmental flow, because there are fish downstream. One item that I will add with the decommissioning is there would likely have to be a study, because at least we were told that there's invasive fish species downstream of the dam. So if there is something decommissioned, I would highly suspect some sort of structure would still have to be put in place to prevent those invasive species from getting into chain link.
So my next question is, on your slide presentation, you had maintenance of the work. What does that include? Because right now we've had the dam for 1967 for this one. Why do we now have to pay $10,000 to $20,000 a year to do what?
So Myron might have to help me here, but my understanding is that the current budget, you're currently paying somewhere in the neighborhood of 12,000, that ballpark. And so the estimate that we provided up to 24,000 just reflects potential cost increase, but it's more, a lot of it's to do with ongoing conversations that we'll have to have and how engaged the community wants to remain in maintaining that dam. If they don't want to continue with that engagement, then that maintenance would fall to RDOS staff. And that of course would increase the cost to some degree.
Okay, because we are doing a lot of the maintenance on the dam ourselves right now. All right, so that 14,000 is, we're already paying 12 of that?
Maybe 14, 10 or 12, yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, that was my question too. I presume that that includes the money coming from our taxes for the diversion, correct? which now we're rolling the diversion into the dam as one. And so that extra $10,000 to $15,000 a year is on top of what we're already paying for the diversion maintenance? Okay, because like Pierre said, like nobody comes around and looks at this dam, hasn't come for many, many, many years and done anything. And now we're gonna have a brand new dam, and I can't see why we have to, anyone spending $12,000 or $15,000 for
Yeah,
that.
and again, we're trying to paint the picture of this as the worst case scenario. So
But we're
if,
still gonna be dinged the percentage annually on our taxes regardless of what.
yeah, so
No?
so worst case scenario, but I do want to, I'll let Jim clarify, but one other comment I'll just share is that historically, the lens on dam maintenance hasn't been what it is now. So the province a couple of years ago was audited for their oversight on dams, and it was a fairly critical audit. So they're much more active now in their oversight of dams. So what that means is that moving forward, the maintenance on this dam, if it goes ahead and is upgraded, the expectation is going to be significantly more than what it's been in the past. And you will see more active maintenance on that dam, but I'll allow Jim to add what he was hoping to add.
I just wanted to add that it is worst case scenario. You will be taxed on that portion at whatever the cost is. We will always give you the worst case. We don't want to tell you a number that's low and you go, I'm going to vote yes because it's so low. And then we come back and go, oops, this is what it is. One of the things that Alan was saying is that right now there's a lot of work done in Hill House, and he talked about the new standards. Well, the new standards may require more work that we know of. So this takes into account the possible standards and then increased costs.
I just don't really understand what work's involved when it's a brand new dam and there's just a simple spillway with a wheel that you turn up one way or the other.
And also, also reserve, Myron's reminded me, reserves. So in the future, there's money there, so we don't have to come back to you like this. Earlier, I was talking to you about borrowing funds, Sage Mesa, 33 million. Why do they have to pay 33 million? Because it was province's oversight. They controlled it and they didn't put the reserves in. So it's a pay now, pay later. And I'd rather come to you and say, pay a little bit each year, and over 30 years, it's there. And the board passed a revenue policy, which they didn't have to, municipalities have to, where you look at certain reserves, 50, do the users of today pay or do the users of tomorrow pay? By borrowing, the users of today and tomorrow pay. But you don't have to pay as much reserves. There's still reserves being put in.
Gotcha.
So
Understand.
they're being proactive.
Okay, thank you very much. The other question I had is that before the regional district appreciated that they were the major person responsible for the dam, I, as a previous water license holder on the dam, was told by the dam safety officer that I and the other 4 or 5 dam license holders were responsible for this project. And I just want to be assured that all the other dam license holders, some of whom are downstream, are involved in this project. They're not necessarily on the lake, but they have water licenses or have had historically to take water out of the creek. And I guess many people take water out of the creek just without a license, but those that do have license holders who have had invested in this, they should be involved in this project, it seems to me.
So there's 62 individuals.
Yeah, that's
you.
not.
Okay,
they
that's
weren't
all
like-
there. That's all there is.
Okay. Okay, well, that sounds a little unrealistic somehow. Yeah, so anyway, thank you for your presentations. I mean, it's brought some clarity. I'm a very strong proponent of this project going ahead. I love the lake. I've been coming for a long time and I hope to come for a lot longer. I think we're kind of between a rock and a hard place myself. I had a lot to do with the dam safety officer when they, after those other dam incidents, and they started to take more interest in this dam, and they didn't identify any of the concrete issues or whatnot that obviously existed at the time, but you know, we were doing maintenance on the dam to kind of keep abreast of things. But I think that what people have to appreciate, that this project, the beginnings of this project go back at least 5 or 6, 7 years. And we have a lake association that that people attend. Many people here attend. Obviously, many don't, but this has been discussed since the get-go, at least 5 or 6 years. And there's been annual mail outs, and it's been clear that this sort of thing is coming down the line in some form. I'm just glad I'm not paying for 1/5 of the cost myself. So from that point of view, I feel like I'm relatively off the hook. But I would suggest that people take a hard look at how they want this lake to look in 5 years, because it's either going to look like it is now, and this has been a great year for the lake with the algae and so forth until just recently. But I also know from my grandparents-in-law what it was like before the dam was built in the early 60s, and it was just a bunch of sludge, right? Final question. Sorry. Is there any opportunity between now and next year to perhaps apply for any other potential funds over and above what's already been secured?
Well, it's not out of our control, but if something comes up where it's eligible, we always are looking for that. And one thing, that the interest rate that we applied right now, I'm hoping that that's a worst case scenario, because between now and the time, if it is a yes vote, we'll be locking in at the rate that is, so that 4.95 may be lower, I'm hoping. I looked as recently as today, and it did drop a bit. But there's no use coming back to you and giving you the new rates every time it goes up and down. But
Appreciate that.
we will be getting the best rate available.
Okay, thank you very much.
No. Hi, Jackie Davies, 3395 Princeton Summerland Road. So my house is the one that you see next to the depression. And we will have riprap on our property. Couple questions. One clarifying just for the group. I believe I know the answer, but I think it needs to be clarified. The connection between the Shinnish Creek bylaw and the new bylaw that's going to be created to amend that bylaw to include the dam, because currently the money that was in reserve, and that may be the reserve funds that you're mentioning, or maybe not, have been gathered over a number of years for the maintenance of the Shinnish Creek diversion. And so some background on that and clarity on access to those funds and how they might be used for the dam.
That's a Julian kind of question. The two services are being merged together.
Yeah. That's a very good question that we can't really answer very clearly. That's not because it hasn't been defined how it's going to be done. We just don't know that, the panel here. The two bylaws, or the two services really, one that's currently existing, one that's not, are going to become one. The reserves that you have currently as part of the Shinnish Creek bylaw are going to be there. They're not going to be moved around anywhere else. But as you may recall, we did an assessment of the Shinnish Creek probably a couple of years ago now, which highlighted that there's going to be a fair amount of work that's going to be required there, right?
That's why we want the funds.
Right.
Yeah.
So that really is a segue into the additional operating funds that are going to be collected to not only serve the dam, but also the diversion. So that will become one. I know that doesn't completely answer your question, but it becomes one service area supporting both of those projects, let's call them.
Right. And I got 2 points, Paul, sorry. Just to clarify with respect to the financial statements audit, I'm the CPA in the crowd. Just for clarification, with all due respect, it's the audits actually is audit of a point in time for a fair statement of the financial statements. So just for clarity, it doesn't get down to the nuts and bolts of a project, but I do understand the weight that would put on the administration if there was some oversight. And to the group here, we do get a financial statement with respect to the bylaw, which we do work with the regional district to ask questions on. So if we see something going over budget, much like we've heard about in North Vancouver and West Kelowna, this is what I believe this group is concerned about, that we just want some assurances that we're not going to go down that road.
And I did mention that the audit does not go to the project level.
Right. Okay. Then lastly, for us, we were hoping to get this done this year, but we blew past a bunch of timelines and deadlines. And there was now the archaeological investigation, which I think was new. So do we have a timeline of drop dead dates to get this done so that we're not talking about this next year? Like, we need to know what we're working towards. And I would expect that if you have sort of a projected start date, that we go backwards from that to give us ample time and room to really consider this and make sure that as a community, we can come together and make this happen.
So the answer to that is yes, we do have an idea of what that timeline is. Some of that was already identified as part of the slides. Our window of construction is again next year at this time, right? August to October. So when we work our way backwards from that, there's a good number of things that need to happen. One is that archaeological inspection needs to take place, and we're still waiting on that permit to be released by the province. I just checked up on that this morning, and there's no word on that. We thought that we were going to have it at the beginning of August. In fact, August 3rd was my date that I was hoping for, but that didn't happen. We're still waiting on that. Next is to be able to continue to clarify these questions that we get from yourselves and make sure that we're on the right track of providing the dam that's going to be suitable for the community. Adjust the drawings. We need to make the drawings reflect the current plan, and that is the removal of that spillway bridge. That will take place over the next weeks and months, submitting that to the province for their review and reassessment. We're trying to get in front of the construction window, let's call it again, with the contractors by either having to go back out for a proposal or tender for this construction effort earlier on in the year so that we can get good pricing or as best pricing as we can before the docket of the contractors fills up, and they're, we're looking to get this done or get them to commit to something when they're hungry. So that's our objective. And then ultimately it comes down to the petition process. So that petition process will be critical for us to get out to you sometime in the spring to make sure that we can action all this in time for this time next year.
Right. So we're waiting on the province for certain things to happen and other items on the list before you can send out the petition. So that's what I'm talking about. So if the province is going to hold us up, which is going to push us back a year and cost us more money, then I think we need to get on top of that.
This question's for Myron. And I just want to say before I ask the question, we talked about this being a non-government or funded project. The Growing Communities Fund was from the Area H Director, Bob Coyne, that we benefit from, that offset our campsite, if you will. Myron worked on the Agriculture Water Infrastructure Program, and I provided some information. We've got one more grant that I've received that we notice on, and it's with the Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation. That 100 grand, has that been finalized yet?
That has not been finalized. There are a few things for us to kind of mop up on that. We're hoping to secure that. I know that there were some timelines that were critical for that grant. We're aware of that. We're working with them diligently to make sure that we can secure that, but that's not been finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused here. It says the $750,000 on that slide for estimated funds to be borrowed. You guys mentioned that that's not going to increase, but at the same time, you say you're retendering this project early next year. So there's no guarantee that that $1.75 million is going to hold. Have you considered that?
Absolutely. There should be an asterisk right next to that 750 saying, yeah, that number could change because if that price comes back higher than the 1.75 that we have up there, then we'll have to re-identify what that cost is going to be.
Have you asked the contractors to remove the bridge portion from the project and got a credit back from any of them?
If we're gonna be tendering, they won't have the bridge on there. That 750 does have a bit of padding right now, but it's time for you to vote, you're gonna have the number that's the maximum amount, worst case scenario. So we had a meeting already, no, it was yesterday, I believe, that we put that number up there in case the tender goes higher. So I'm hoping that is in there already, so we don't have to come back with a higher number.
Well, you guys would have an idea, I'm assuming, at the bridge portion was a lump sum pay item in that contract. What are you expecting that price to drop by if the bridge is removed?
So there isn't, yes, we have an idea, and it's a proprietary number. So it was a bid from a contractor. And if we give you that number here, the other bidders would know what they bid on. So we are aware of what that number is. And it's not as, there's numbers out there that we heard that it was 250,000. It wasn't 250,000. That was one of the bids. Somebody stated that they shouldn't have, but that's a bid that we weren't looking at.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, so it was not, so. Okay, so it was not $250,000.
Yeah, it was. It was over $200,000. I did price the job myself, so I'm aware of how much was in that line item. Also, you mentioned earlier that there was a local supplier of riprap, that you guys have been in contact with the contractors to reduce their price based on local supply of riprap. I have not been contacted by anybody from RDOS in that regard.
No, what we did is we had provided that contact information to the contractors that were bidding the job to allow them that opportunity to see if there's some cost saving. And that's where we left it.
At what stage? At the tendering, at the proposal
At the
stage?
proposal.
Yeah, that's news to me. Where is this local supplier?
I'm not sure. We were provided that contact information. I don't know.
Okay, well, yeah, that's news to me. I haven't been given that information because, yeah, that would be a good cost savings as well. Not shipping that riprap from 2-hour round trip, 4-hour round trip, pardon me.
Well, and those are the types of things that we continually look for, right? To try and reduce those costs.
Yeah, I'm just disappointed if I hear that information is being shared to the contractors, me being one of them, have not been shared that information. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Can I just get one follow-on clarification? You are committing to us today that this will be retendered? Yes? Yes.
It will have to be reviewed again. It will either go out as a proposal or a tender.
But everyone's going to have a chance to reprice this without the bridge, if you're not going to.
With the bridge removed, yes. Any other questions?
Good afternoon. Mervyn Kathy Eldred at 3610 Princeton Summerland Road. Can the regional district make the rule one way or the other for assessed value versus parcel tax?
We're recommending parcel tax. That's will be going to the board.
So it's your decision which way it's going to
No,
be?
it's the board's decision.
The board's decision.
Yes. But parcel tax is something that the province would recommend. Again, going back to the individual that wanted to pay the whole amount right up front, which means there's no interest. If you do it by assessment, it doesn't work. Having assessment being the taxes, it's volatile. That means that depending on the market and the economy, your price is going to go up or down. Your portion would be taxed up or down. So with the parcel tax, it's always consistent. And I have a rationale for why I would recommend to the board parcel tax. And there's a lot of, besides being volatile, every single property in this area is benefiting one way or the other from the lake. Either it being they get draw water, having the lake there is the reason most likely that the property owners bought in this area. Like, this is a beautiful area. The lake makes it that much more attractive.
Yeah, except the lakefront people have more to lose than the non-lakefront people. Everybody in here agree? Okay. Okay.
I have a property that I would probably benefit financially in the short term.
Yeah. Okay, in the mid-80s, well, we live at Eastgate. We didn't have hydro. We looked at getting hydro in there and we needed to borrow a pile of money. RDOS came in and loaned us the money. And it was paid back based on assessed value, not on a parcel tax. Why would this be any difference? People with or without hydro benefited the same as way you would on the lake.
I can't speak of what the board did in 1980.
Yeah, mid-80s.
I can guarantee,
Mid-80s.
I can guarantee I was not there.
Yeah.
I've only been here 5 years, so I can't speak to why they did. I just know that based on the history that I've had, and just so you all know, I was the first CFO and the second CAO for West Kelowna. I helped start the community, and we worked, a lot of the costs that we did were parcel tax. No, excuse me. Anything to do with assessments were parcel tax, not assessed value. And it's working fine. People understood that the benefits that they were all getting. As far as the electrical part of it, I used to work for the city of Penticton also, and I heard about what you just said. I didn't know it was parcel. That was based on assessment, but there was some other issues too, that for some reason, the municipalities end up paying for that one area that you're talking about. But I'm not going to debate that, because in my mind, I think the right thing to do is parcel tax, and because you're all getting benefit one way or the other.
Okay, thank you.
I'm with the Bartel residents at 3526 Prince and Summerlin Road. I only want one guarantee, is if we pay full amount and not wait the 30 years, can we have some guarantee that we won't be taxed? When I look at my taxes, there'll be nothing on there that has this amount.
You won't have to pay on the parcel tax that you paid. If the only way that something would change is if another bylaw like this has to come out, and then you get to vote on it.
So if I pay, well, we'll round it off at $10,000 when we get billed on our taxes. If I pay that amount, I will never see that on my taxes again. I'll be too old when 30 years comes around. I probably won't be here, but I don't want to see this on my taxes year after year after year. And I want to be able to guarantee to whoever I sell my property to that they won't be taxed on this.
So my mind's going 100 miles an hour now, because what I would see is there's could be two parcel taxes, one for the dam, one for the operations. On the dam side, yes, because you pay it, there's no interest, nothing, and that's the big one. The other one, what I'm hearing from the staff is that it may go up anywhere from what, 12 to 15,000 operating costs. That would be a different tax.
Yeah.
So I would recommend to the staff to go to the board to have two taxes. So the first one, the guarantee, yes. The second one, to be fair, no. And that is actually a benefit to you, because what if the tax operational cost goes down? I want to be fair. So I think I just wrote a report for the board.
Yeah, right now we are paying for Shinish Creek, our tax on Shinish Creek. That money's just been going up and up and up and up. And since I've come to the area, my partner is the one who did all the volunteer work on the Shinish Creek diversion. And he didn't get paid anything. He just got paid for the supplies that were used to upgrade the diversion. So is,
And that helped.
and I
reduce the
understand that money's going to now go in with the dam. If you're going to put the two bylaws together, if I'm hearing right.
Well, the more work that's done in-house, the less the cost. So
Yeah.
one more question, please, and then we'll wrap up. If there is another question,
Not a question, but.
if you can go up there. Oh, two.
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so we're talking about an operating cost. We've operated the Shinnish Creek diversion for what, 50 years? 50 plus years. Hasn't cost the RDOS much, if any, money. We've all paid into it. We've done that with volunteer money. Why would we have to pay an operating cost to operate a dam to property owners?
Okay, it's twofold. A part of that would be reserves. One of the things that your board is now robust and and has established operating reserves for the 665 services that we have. We're up to 199 reserves. So part of that is that for future unknown expenses, but there's also requirements that the province may be throwing in that we don't know about. What I said earlier is that the reserve amount will be consistent because we want to put so much money into the system and there's a reserve policy that the board adopted. The part that is unknown is any operational costs that might have to happen because of new requirements. But at the end of the day, you would be taxed at the actual cost, not if it turns out that there's no operational maintenance because the work's done in-house, that number may not appear, but the reserve portion will.
But like I said, we've been continuously operating the diversion. And you said that those two projects could be rolled together, correct? That they were going to be, for all intents and purposes, thought of as a one parcel.
We'll have to look at that, redefine it. Anytime you did in-house costs, what that did is drop your bill because because the regional district didn't have to do it.
If there were operating costs, I think most of us in this room would rather do a work party a couple times a year to do the operational duties and reduce those costs to nothing other than out of our pocket and sweat equity to reduce that as an actual tax to be paid.
And then the cost won't go up. That's
exactly. So can that just be put into a, whatever comes out of this meeting that, we're absolutely willing to do that. Originally, I've been on the property for over 40 years. And in the beginning, there was 4 people that did that diversion maintenance once a year or twice a year.
So that's not something we're going to ask you to do right now. It's you would.
No, I'm just saying, take it into consideration, present it to the people you got to present it to try and save us your operational cost of a dam. It's a chunk of concrete
and
some rock.
I encourage you to do that.
Okay, that's all I got.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, last one.
Not a question. This is acknowledgement. You gentlemen may or may not know, but there've been some men and women and property owners here that have worked their butts off as volunteers to bring this situation to where it is. They have been doing a lot of communicating. They've had some pretty serious challenges and they've maintained real decorum. And I applaud these men and women in this room. You know who you are and we do too. So thank you so very, very much for the very hard work you did, all your time and expertise.
I want to thank everybody and I want to acknowledge your director.
So if you guys, anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Bob Coyne. I'm your area director, been your area director since 2014. Yeah, I'm the guy. And am I happy with this? Absolutely not a chance in HE double hockey sticks. But this has been this whole project has been a bit of a gong show since the day it started. And I'm not dissing any of these guys sitting at the table because none of them were there then. And we've had a complete change in management. We've got a different attitude. And when this all first started, we tried to put together a meeting with everybody, send everybody a letter from the top of Chain Lake to the Smelcomine River. So that everybody, if they didn't want to participate, at least they knew what the heck was going on. Because Bob hit the nail right on the head over here, that it's not just the people here that are being affected. There's people down the river that are down the creek that don't know what would happen. There's people sitting at that table that really don't know what would happen if the dam wasn't there. And it's just the fact that you guys have been here a long time. I've been here a long time, and I've seen the lake go from a swamp in the 50s to what it is today. So it's been a heck of a long road to get here. And there's going to have to be more of these meetings, because now we have an administration that wants to have these meetings. The previous administration didn't want to do that. They flatly refused. So that's why nobody got a lot of input other than the group that Paul heads, and he got it out to the majority of the people that he could. I was out 3 years ago now that, oh, we had a done deal. We were going to be $750,000 and everything was good to go. There hadn't even been an ARC study done, even considered an ARC study being done. There was nothing to do with access or right-of-ways to get to the project. We're there now. We're working on those. So is this over? No. But at least we got a team that's working on it now, and it's not being pushed out the back door. So I want to say thanks to these guys. I come out here ready this morning. I've been very upset about this for a number of months, as Alan will attest that we've had some pretty heated conversations over this. And I was, you know, last night I was ready to come out here and throw these guys all under the bus and push them under there with a stick to just make sure they couldn't get out. But I'm not doing that. I'm here to say these guys are here doing their best. They do work for us, and we have to remember that. And one thing that Alan said that, and I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit, that he said, why are these people questioning engineers? It's your damn duty to question them engineers every single day, because they're spending your money. And if you don't ask these questions, they do what they think is right, because they look at a book and they see this and they see that, but they're not the guys that live here. They're not the guys paying for it. So you guys got to keep, Paul and his group, they've got to keep asking these questions, and everybody. And Jim's pretty damn good at answering his phone, and you can send him an email and he'll always answer that. But he's running all over the country doing these sorts of things. So anybody that has any more questions or anything, please direct them to Jim, because he's the guy that's, if he doesn't know the answer, those guys answer to him. And Jim ain't a very big guy, but he carries a hell of a stick. So just, you know, let's not beat him up too bad. But anyways, I want to thank everybody for coming. And it's really good to have all, like, a good turnout. And like I say, any more questions, please contact Jim, because he's the man. He gets the big bucks and he can pack it. So there you go. Thank you very much.